Intellectual stew. Intellectual stew with James Kirkland.
Powerful and provocative. Prophetic and practical.
Have you ever found yourself?
Are you dating for that person?
Informative and
I feel
inspirational.
every bit of it. Like, I'm not trying to waste my
How you gonna do better if you don't know what better looks like? I do.
Intellectual stew.
Come on, let's talk about it with me, the mind massager.
Intellectual stew with James Kirkland. Intellectual stew. Intellectual stew. Intellectual stew with James. Intellectual stew. Intellectual stew with James Kirkland. Intellectual stew. Intellectual stew.
Put my mute mood music on, then I'll be ready. Here we go.
Intellectual stew.
Yeah, here we go. Now I'm getting ready.
Oh, we're cooking something true. Intellectual stew. Real raw and relevant for you. With James Kirkland guiding through the deep, the light, the old, the new. Intellectual stew. Yeah, we're stirring up the view.
All right, what's up? What it do? Time for another episode of the Intellectual Stew. If you're in the audience, say hello, say hi, say cat, say dog, say boo, say something to let me know that you're here. This is a impromptu show. You know, impromptu means it's a pop-up. I didn't plan it, but I was sitting here planning for Monday's episode because I am returning on Monday. And certain things I kind of want to get out before we get to that point. On Monday, we're going to be discussing a topic that I'm calling Who Told Us We Had to Suffer in Silence? March is a renewal month. And so we're going to look at mental health from a Black man's perspective. And we're going to discuss why we've had to be strong and, you know, who told us not to show emotions, all of those types of things. So the topic will be who told us that we have to suffer in silence. Now, last night I went out. I went to church. Hold on, my computer's about to go off. Fix that right quick. All right, got it. My bad. All right, so last night I went to church, and I'll be honest, I used to love like going to church revivals and going to different settings and things of that nature. But over the last several years, for whatever reason, it literally takes an act of God to kind of get me out of the house. I've kind of isolated myself. And then I think I tricked myself into believing that somewhere along the way I had become an introvert. And people who know me, they're like, you? Because they remember who I was. They remember, who I had been in my life and whatnot. So when I told them that I had become an introvert, most of them were like, no, no way. You're not an introvert. You're not an introvert. So I started thinking about that. And then last night I went out, and when I went to church, I really enjoyed myself. And my mind traveled back to when I used to, go out all the time. I used to be a part of the social scene. I used to be a part of the social setting, but somewhere along the way, I think I tricked myself into believing that I had become an introvert. And let me ask you something, because little did I know I was suffering in silence. But let me ask you a question. Let me put this up. Let me ask you a question. Who told us, especially men, who told us that we had to suffer in silence? Who taught us that strength meant suppression? Who taught us that, or who convinced us that being good meant being quiet about pain? Somewhere along the way, and this is for my brothers, like sisters, if you can relate, eavesdrop, go ahead, do it. I don't blame you. But somewhere along the way, we learned, don't complain, don't cry, don't burden anybody. Handle it yourself, pray about it, move on, because that's a strength. But what if silence isn't strength? Yeah, I agree with that, Bradley. What if silence isn't strength, but what if silence is really survival? And what if survival has been mistaken for personality? Because sometimes what we call introversion, I'm talking about myself, I can't talk about anybody else. What we call independence, what we call I'm just to myself, is not introversion, it's really isolation. And hey, good morning, Auntie Renita. And isolation changes people. Let me tell you something. Introversion is real, but introversion is more about recharging. And some people recharge alone. That's what introversion is. That's healthy. But isolation is different. Isolation is prolonged disconnection. Isolation is when you stop explaining, when you stop asking for help, when you stop naming what hurts. Over time, if you allow it to, isolation will start to look like a personality. I'm talking. So you stop going out, you stop answering calls, you start to feel drained around people. I'm telling you, this was my process until I had this epiphany moment where I started to wake up. But is that really who you are? Or is that what happened to you? Is that the mask that you choose to put on every day? Because some people wear masks like it's actually a part of their costume or their uniform. We get so accustomed to wearing masks that we forget what our true identities are, because we have to look a certain way, as Bradley just said, for society, because nobody ever wants to advertise their weaknesses. Only one that advertises wounds was Christ, because when Thomas said, show me your wounds, Thomas said, Christ said right there, look, they pierced me in the side, they put nails in my hand. Most people don't advertise their wounds though, right? So we put these masks on. But the question is that who you are? Is that what happened to you? Because there's a difference between I enjoy my peace and I feel safer away from people. David said in Psalms, when you get a chance, check it out. Psalms 32, verses 3 and 4. David said, when I kept silence, my bones grew old. I think in the King James it said my bones waxed old. What really David was really saying is that the silence that some of us think is strength, he said that silence began to affect his body. Let me tell you something. Hear me here. Hear me well. Unspoken pain does not disappear. It internalizes. If you agree with that, drop some hearts in the comment. Unspoken pain, because you can sweep it under the rug all you want to. You can act like you weren't affected. You can act like somebody stepped. Listen, pain produces a result. And typically the result is something that says ouch. And how we say ouch, some people say it verbally. Some people grimace. Some people might lash out. Some people just a reflex. But unspoken pain does not disappear. What it does is it internalizes. Think about it, talking about isolation. One of the harshest punishments in prison is not always the physical violence, it's the solitary confinement that follows. Think about it. Genesis 2:18 said something. It said it's not good that the man should be alone. That's because we were designed to fellowship. We were designed to communicate. But so isolation, even Adam, it was never the design. Research shows that prolonged isolation can lead to anxiety. It can lead to depression. It can lead to emotional numbness. Talking about prolonged isolation. It can lead to memory problems and increased suicide risk. Because the nervous system reads disconnection. Watch this. The nervous system reads disconnection as danger. And so you don't have to be in prison to experience isolation. You can be married and isolated. You could be in church and isolated. You could be on social media and still feel isolated. But there's a difference between chosen isolation versus forced silence. I think after my divorce, and I know I'm still talking about it, it's been 7-8 years. Some stuff you don't get over. Not yet. I'm sorry, whatever. But anyway, church, I think I chose isolation for a season of my life. And there are times that solitude can restore you. Jesus would go off the mountains to pray because he needed to recharge. But there's a difference between choosing solitude and force and choosing isolation. See, because maybe you were betrayed. Maybe you were misunderstood. Hey, Mrs. Gaston, how are you? Maybe you were betrayed. Maybe you were misunderstood. Maybe you were told to toughen up. But the body, watch this. The body remembers what the mouth refuses to say. So you can trick yourself into believing that it's okay and that you can get on, that I'm going to get through it and I'm tough and I can handle it. And, men aren't supposed to cry. But your body starts to take on those things. And as your body starts to take on those things, your body begins, what's happening, it's like programming AI, getting your voice to say what you want it to say, or programming a computer to make the computer do what you want it to do. Your body automatically adjusts to certain temperatures, to certain climates that you put yourself into. And you can wear the mask all you want, but when you got to go home and face reality, I told him last night on my live, every negative emotion needs a body. And one of the things that helped me the most is when I started going through therapy. One of the first things my therapist did was she would teach me how to recognize emotions. Because for so long I didn't, because I didn't want to talk about them. I didn't want to articulate them. Because if I didn't talk, then you didn't have anything on me. I wasn't sharing anything about me. And so we could keep that distance or that gulf or that gap between us that kept us in our respective places. But what ended up happening was I ended up conditioning my body. So then when the therapist would say, how was your day? Okay. Tell me a win that you had. I ain't really have a win. But what happened? Man, just a regular day. Same thing as yesterday. And it was just so numb. And I didn't realize that my body had conditioned. Now, as she started teaching me how to recognize emotions, then one day we get on the call, and she said, and she had me put a win list together. And she said, "Let me tell me about your win list." I said, "You want to hear my first win?" She said, "What was it?" I said, "I'm gonna be honest. My first win was the other day. I washed clothes, I put them in the dryer, and then after I dried them, I folded them right away." She said, "Good job." That was a win for me, because sometimes I'll throw them in a chair, or sometimes I'll leave them in the basket for a few days. Y'all know y'all pick clothes out the basket. Don't act like I'm the only one. But when I started to recognize that emotion and I felt accomplished, now I started taking control over my life. Because I'm gonna tell you something. I wrote the book Stuck on the Couch, and I did get up off the couch, but sometimes I find myself making U-turns. And I'm writing a book now, not about the couch that I was stuck on, but I'm talking about the rooms that I retreated to after I got off of the couch, because there was some rooms that I never left that symbolized places in my childhood that I had written certain rules, and I started to abide by those rules as I lived it. And so I reverted and retreated to the rooms that I lived in, even as a child or as a young adult or as a teenager. And I stopped recognizing those emotions. But guess what? My body still my body still remembered those things, and the body remembers what the mouth refuses to say. You ever heard the saying, when you go, sometimes we continue to go with what we know, but when you go with what you know, you always end up where you were. I'm amazed. Sometimes I work with a funeral home, and sometimes families will have, they'll request the white doves. And it's amazing to me that they have these doves in the box, and the doves, they'll put them in the air and the doves will fly away. But then the doves know exactly where to go by, because their bodies have been conditioned to go back, and the funeral director can go and retrieve the same doves, put them back in the same box, and go through the same process over again, because the body remembers. Regardless, the body remembers. David said, "Oh, that I had wings that I would fly away." This is a joke. "Oh, that I had wings, I would fly away." But the doves do have wings for the funeral home, and they keep coming back. I thought it was funny. Y'all don't have to think it's funny. Anyway, but let's look at this even further. Let's look at this isolation versus introversion thing even further. Let's look at it. Let's look at it. Being vulnerable with those you trust. Absolutely. All right. So today, approximately 64 to 70% of Black children are born in the single parent homes, most often led by mothers. Let's talk about this. All right. This is real talk, no bashing, none of that kind of stuff. That is not condemnation of Black women. Strength does not strength does not erase strain. Hear me. I would hashtag that if I was y'all. Strength does not erase strain. Mass incarceration, economic disenfranchisement, and generational trauma fractured the Black family structure. Malachi 4:6 says this. It says, "He shall." Hold on one second. Hold on. Let me do something right quick. I need to check something. Hold on. Let me do a little quick commercial right quick. Yeah, hold on. Don't go nowhere. Stay right there. Hold on. Stay right there.
Intellectuals too. Oh, we're cooking something true. Intellectuals too.
All right, I'm back. My daughter's on the phone. She got a little loud, but I ain't want to mess up. I don't like telling nobody to be quiet in their own house. So, but anyway, my bad. I'm back now. All right. So today, approximately, where was I? Mass incarceration, economic disenfranchisement, generational trauma has fractured the black family structure. All right. So Malachi 4:6 says, he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children and the heart of the children to their fathers. If hearts must be turned back, that means that at one point they were turned away. People do not really realize the social effects of mass incarceration. I know slavery had to represent itself. I get it. And it did it in the form of the prison system. I get it. Because, when slavery went away, a whole bunch of free labor went away. And so they had to figure out how to recoup it. They tried to do it through the vagrancy laws. They tried to do some of it through Jim Crow. A lot of that stuff happened. And then and the ill effects, even if you go as far back as reading Willie Lynch's letter, it talked about how the division would come when they got the father out of the house and the mother would be in charge. But as Belinda Gaston just said on YouTube, strength, echoing what I said, strength does not erase strain. Just because you're strong enough to do it doesn't mean you're not straining while you're doing it. And whenever you have straining while you're doing it, trust me, there are effects of your strain, whether it's raising your voice, whether it's isolating yourself, whether it's punishment after abuse or punishment after you've gotten angry. Strength sometimes comes with strain, right? And the ill effects or the after effects of all of these African-American men going to prison, because I think about 25 years ago, it was like over 1 million African-American men in prison now. And we're finding out a lot of those cases were trumped up. A lot of people are being exonerated through DNA. A lot of things are happening. But think about the ill effects of no man in the house. I mean, for no uncles, no fathers, no brothers, no male figures. I spoke with one lady one time, and she said that nobody in her house had ever seen a man in the house. But Malachi says he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children. Now, and if there's no father in the house, somebody produced the child, though, right? You ain't do that by yourself. Listen, father absence is statistically linked to higher dropout rates, behavioral challenges, and increased incarceration. Absence explains behavior, but it does not define destiny. And at some point, silence ends up becoming masculinity. Masculinity becomes suppression, and suppression becomes suffering. So here's the real question. And this is a teaser to get us ready for Monday night, because Monday night I'm going to have guests on. I got a therapist coming on with me. And a couple of we're gonna have a good time. Got some people who are currently dealing with mental challenges. But here's the real question, and I want you to ponder this. And if you have an answer, put it in the comments. Who told us we had to suffer in silence? I'm asking this question to the brothers, but sisters, y'all are welcome to answer. Please do. Who told us we had to suffer in silence? Because that's in direct contradiction to Scripture. Because James 5:16 says, confess your faults one to another. And guess what happens when you confess your faults one to another? That ye may be healed. See, when you don't confess it, you carry all that weight. You internalize all of that minutia. I'm going to use that word because I can't say what I want to say or what I'm thinking. You internalize all of that. And internalization ends up becoming inflammation. And inflammation leads to physiological effects, sicknesses, disease. Because your body remembers, your body remembers what the mouth refuses to say. Listen, I know this doesn't make sense, but hear me. Healing is relational. But silence blocks healing. What I say funny, Bradley? Isolation may have been necessary to survive at one point, but survival mode is not meant to be permanent. Maybe we were never meant to suffer in silence. Maybe the strength is learning how to speak. This is James Kirkland. This has been the Intellectual Stew. And remember this, the world is changing. My question for you is, why do you remain the same? Listen, I'll see you on Monday night at 8 p.m. Continue to follow us. See you then.
Intellectual stew. Intellectual stew with James Kirkland.
Powerful and provocative, prophetic and practical,
Have you ever found yourself?
Are you dating for that person?
informative and
I feel
inspirational.
every bit of it. Like, I'm not trying to waste my
How you gonna do better if you don't know what better looks like? I do.
Intellectual stew.
Come on, let's talk about it with me, the mind